Good evening, everyone. I am so grateful that each of you have made time to come out and join with all of us this evening. It absolutely warms my heart, and it is a great way to start the year. So I think we should all give ourselves a round of applause first, right? So my name is Amanda, and I'm co-hosting this evening with Wild Style. So I've been a resident of Indianapolis for 20 years. Or I was a resident of Indianapolis for 20 years, lived in Fall Creek Place, St. Clair Place, raised my daughter in Indy, right? I was a renter as a single mom that whole entire time too, right? So in 2005, that looked very different, right? So the first apartment that my husband and I rented together, we paid $400 a month in rent. And it was a building that was owned by my mother-in-law, Diana Rice Wilkerson. Some of you may know her. And she had, grown up in Fall Creek Place. Right? And she worked in real estate. So that was my first experience of being a resident of Indianapolis, and I'm right there next to the bridge at 25th and Central, right? My bedroom is right there at that corner. And so that's the first time that I know what it sounds like for there to be people who are unhoused that live underneath the bridge, because they're underneath my bedroom at night as I'm sleeping and I'm pregnant with my child, right? Fast forward a little bit. I also worked in the HUD Housing Human Services conglomerate of industries. That might be a good way to explain it, for about 15 years as well. I'm guessing some of you remember the AmeriQuest days. Okay, so one of my first jobs was I worked at Acorn Housing, and then I worked at Momentive Consumer Credit Counseling Services, right? And I quickly became the lead loss mitigation foreclosure counselor in Indiana, right? And so I helped thousands of people keep their homes at that time, right? So I know what those mortgage payments looked like because I saw thousands of them. I saw at least 10 different budgets a day, right? Now, when I first started working at Acorn Housing, this is another problem that we need to talk about, is that I didn't even know what the hell a mortgage was, so I had to look it up in the dictionary, okay? And all of the files were a mess. Right. But I learned that at that time, especially, you could always go to the library and there would be a book to teach you how to figure out what to do. And so I found a book that told me this is HUD's instructions for how to keep these files. And so, my self-destructive self at that time, took my child into the office over the weekend, and we sat there with the files together while she was in her playpen, and we passed the audit the next week. They didn't expect us to keep the office. They didn't expect us to pass the office. I didn't realize what I had just pulled off. I get it now, right? But I saved the office, didn't even know it, because I showed up and did the work, right? So I've been a resident of Indianapolis. I've worked in homeless services specifically for 10 years, right? That's where I met Pastor Green. It's been a while. It's been a while. I pretty much any job you can think of that would be within the homeless services industry in Indianapolis, I've done it and figured out how to do it all together at the same time. So this stuff is possible, right? This stuff isn't impossible. We have an issue of will. We do not have an issue of possibility, okay? If there was an issue of possibility, I wouldn't be wasting my time. I wouldn't be wasting your time this evening. I wouldn't ask you to come out here when it's this cold. It's possible. And so, the three reasons why I would say I'm here, I would be, my friends are dead, and their faces haunt me. They're dead. And I've got to do something with that. It's either going to kill me or it's going to push me to be able to do more, right? And if it's not the time to call out political violence now, then when the hell will it be? Because I don't know what else to call this besides that. This is political violence. When there are babies in this cold weather with frozen diapers, and then 14-year-old babies getting shot in front of an IHA building, my question to Wild Style, and the reason why we are here this evening, is because I said if we were sitting right here 100 years ago, what would we have done to make that happen? Because that's the only thing when I look at the history books that's ever had any success. And so that's why I'm here. That's why we are here. So again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for standing with me. And I'm going to pass it off to Wildstyle.
It's on? Okay, there we go. Thank you for coming out today. I understand that all of you care, and there's a lot of other people in the city that care too, but many people are demoralized from all of this. I want to start by recognizing the over 100 people that died unhoused in Indianapolis last year, and all the people struggling to survive this rigid weather right now in 2025. While statistics on homelessness often only count people in shelters or out on the streets, homelessness can mean sleeping in your car in a parking lot, sleeping in abandoned buildings, couch surfing with family and friends, and quite often leads to people living and cohabitating with individuals they should not be living with, leading to violence and death in many cases. Two people that lived on opposite sides of me have been murdered in the last 4.5 years because of domestic violence situations caused by their need for housing. The last person that I lost, she even told me that she was not willing to go back to a shelter because they were so bad. And she was murdered by her child's father. I also want to send out a special thanks to the mutual aid workers, people that are out here putting in their own hard-earned time, money, but also emotional capital. Like, this is hard work. To all the advocates, all the activists, and only the agency workers and city employees that actually care. Only those. Some do, some don't. So last year on January 24th, 2024, it was a rainy day with a high of 53 degrees and a low of 42 degrees. 1,701 people were counted to be unhoused in Indianapolis. Now, this is called the point in time count, and these are not meant to represent all the people that are homeless in Indianapolis. It's simply a metric, like the people that they can easily find and that are in shelters and stuff like that. There's widely different estimates on what that really represents, but most people know, anybody with any common sense knows there's a lot more people in Indianapolis homeless than that. So maybe 2 to 3, maybe 4 times that many. 339 individuals that they counted were completely unsheltered, not in emergency shelters or transitional housing. And most of the people they counted were black, despite black people only being 29% of the population here in Indianapolis. In 2018, the city, clergy, and nonprofits came up with a plan to end the homelessness crisis by 2023. Instead, the point in time counts of unhoused people in Indianapolis have gone up almost every year. The unsheltered number has definitely gone up every year, and the numbers are now higher than it was when we started. Despite there being an increase of 328 permanent supportive housing units since 2019, designed to help house people that are harder to house. And we're talking about people with felonies, likely dealing with mental illness and addiction issues that can't be housed with traditional public housing and Section 8 vouchers. But homelessness in Indianapolis has still increased. At the same time as the Indianapolis Housing Agency, our public housing agency, IHA, has had more trouble maintaining safe public housing and administering housing vouchers for the 25,000 people that depend on them. In 2021, the waiting list for Section 8 vouchers opened and 35,000 people applied. 10,000 met the legal requirements and could prove it. But less than 2,000 of those 10,000 that could prove that they can't pay rent were housed. So that's 8,000 people on a Section 8 waiting list that are more than likely, unless they came into some money or found a job, they are effectively homeless. They may be staying with somebody, they may be living in their cars, they may be laying in the cultural trail, but they are effectively homeless because they do not qualify you for Section 8 if you can go pay rent, if you can afford to pay rent somewhere. But IHA has neglected their properties, causing folks to live in squalor with clogged plumbing, clogged vents, no heat, no air, mold, bed bugs, a whole lot worse than that. They failed to provide security to keep residents safe on their properties that they directly own. And some have been killed, including the 14-year-old girl in Laurelwood that was killed last week. They have even failed to protect their tenants' data, causing some of them in documented cases to be scammed out of money by people posing as the Indianapolis Housing Agency. In 2022, they were looking into a process to flip even more of their traditional public housing buildings into Section 8 project-based rental assistance because they've been having financial troubles. But in 2024, the federal government determined that IHA was using those Section 8 dollars meant to house folks to pay other expenses. Later in 2024, Mirror Indy interviewed people that had been made homeless by IHA because they had ghosted their landlords and quit paying their rents on Section 8. But 2 years before that, I discovered that the Indy Star had also verified that IHA was also doing this, but it hadn't necessarily resulted in people ending up on the street yet at that point. When the federal government came in to take over IHA, they discovered that there were 1,500 unused housing vouchers, but we only had 1,701 people in the point in time count last year. 25% of those people had children. And when I did the numbers, not saying that it's possible, but it actually was possible that those vouchers may have housed all 1,701 people, since some of them were children with parents out there. Obviously, our permanent supportive housing for individuals, and this is to be used for people that are difficult to house. They have felonies and likely suffer with mental illness and addiction issues. It is vitally important. But in my mind, I believe that it's been separated from the conversation about what is our public housing agency's role in housing people, because they have the bulk of the money. 25,000 people already depend on the Indianapolis Housing Agency, and most of the conversation and a lot of the councils seem to be only geared around permanent supportive housing. And I'm concerned when I was crunching these numbers that these councils are not empowered to go handle IHA, our public housing agency. In my mind, it's probably only the mayor that can do that. So I guess we're going to get into questions at this point for the panelists, and I want to introduce the panelists before we go. Councilor Jesse Brown, I should know his district, but I can't remember. District 13. Fran Quigley, who is a professor and an attorney and an activist. And Reverend Green, who is a pastor and an activist and the head of a whole bunch of stuff that I'm not going to do you a disjustice by trying to name. But these people here on this panel are all extremely knowledgeable about what's going on in our city with the housing, homelessness, and they're passionate about it, and that's why they're here. So, thank you.
Q&A, this is panelists. All right, and so yes, the panel here. So when Wildstyle and I were talking, and trying to figure out, like, if I'm going to bring people out, that needs to be possible. We need to have the right people out here, right? So this is a city county councilor who is able to organize. We have a lawyer who is an activist who literally is in these eviction courts, right? Understands the legalese of this issue. And then we have Pastor Green, who has been, he's my pastor, to be completely honest with you. The reason why Pastor Green is my pastor, besides the Lord directed it, is that because he was the one that was willing to come out there and get in the trenches with me, with these people. Amen. That's the truth. And so I'm going to ask the first question here, and that is, can all the other organizations, and not everybody can answer, I mean, this is, we're going to ask the panel, but also if you guys have questions or answers, chime in. We're all, going to do this together. But can all the other organizations and councils on homelessness actually solve this without a functioning public housing agency capable of administering the federal housing resources?
I'll say a couple words, not that I the definitive answer here, but I think it's important to think about affordable housing in general, broader than just IHA or public housing agencies or anything like that, and just understand the fact that there is no such thing as affordable housing just created in the market. There just is not. Like, you need low-income housing tax credits, you need all sorts of different subsidies to build new housing that's going to be below market rate. Because you can't get investors to come in and pay to create housing that then is not going to make them rich. That's within all of our current regulatory environment, zoning, et cetera. I mean, like, obviously, if you can go get a library book and figure out HUD codes and reorganize your files, we could all get together like the Amish build barns and just build some housing ourselves, right? But it's not going to be a profitable endeavor for us that we're going to be able to do as our full-time jobs. It's going to be a volunteer thing. So can we, the answer to your question, always possible, but it's extremely unlikely to me that without an agency marshaling all the federal resources and subsidies together and issuing proper oversight, I just don't see how realistically we're going to get there in the next couple of years. Although I'd love to hear from anybody who disagrees.
Yeah, I'd like that you brought that idea up about building housing, because that's one of the things that I'm thinking about. It's like how can we fix the homeless problem? And the thing is other countries have done it, other places have done it, right? We just have to come together and know that we want to end this, and then we go out there and we just acquire land. We acquire land, and then we get, my idea was doing a small housing. I think they're already doing it on the east side. There's a little community, but big thing is we can do the same thing on all parts of the sides of the city, where we just go out there, we have a bunch of people build tiny, for one thing, we have to do a lot of rezoning, things like that. And after that, we would do, then you would start building tiny homes and doing community events in these homes. You'd build like either some kind of like they do at like parks, where they have maybe a middle where they have bathrooms, they have showers, things like that, and then the small homes themselves have water, they have kitchens, they have whatever you need, small tiny homes. So that I know the problem with the shelters is you go to these shelters with a bunch of people who are suffering from so many different types of issues, and you're trying to, it's safer for people to go back to their abuser. And the thing is we have to make it so that we can do that. We can take people from these abusive places and we can help people, and that's one of the things I've tried to do myself. It's just like I have a friend who basically she's homeless. Like, she can't go back to her family, she can't do all this stuff, but we cohabitate. We do, and it works very well. And the thing is that's what some people out there, and specifically her, she's got a bunch of issues with ADHD and bipolar. So like going out and getting a job and maintaining a job sounds easy. It's not easy for people like that. For people like me, it's hard to maintain a job. I'm lucky because I have enough mental fortitude to last in these kind of things, but that's what we need to do. We need to go out and we need to form together with different types of people with different careers, different stuff, and we just do it. And with these little tiny homeless communities, we bring out different groups. hospital groups. We bring out all these different types of groups to do all the community work. Instead of doing it across the city at different areas, we have an area where it's safe, it's secure. We have somehow, I mean, again, it's going to be a lot of volunteer work, but it's like, Indianapolis is going to do anything. They can't even plow the roads. Okay, so like, we can't really rely on Indianapolis when everything they've done basically has made the situation worse.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things that you just said here, right? One is that really simply, at the end of the day, it comes down to we need quality housing and we need connections with other human beings. And we're going to have to find creative ways to make that happen until we have the infrastructure that we know is necessary, right? And I agree that we need to come together and be able to do that together. Another thing would be you might hear some of these agencies or some of these folks that get lots of these dollars talk about how they don't have enough money to pay staff, right? How much was it they said they needed in order to have 2 staff people help with 15 other with winter contingency? One service organization said they needed $100,000 to pay for 2 people to do this for 3 months or something, right? It's gonna take political will, and we're gonna have to do it ourselves because that means they're not doing anything, right? So yeah, I think you made some great points, and then I'm gonna pass this microphone back to you.
In regards to that question, I still say that while we're working together to bring about a solution, we still have to command to get to scale. You got to have people working together. Is it possible? We can't do it. I don't think an organization can do it by themselves. I think it takes a group working together. I think it commands that, whether that's philanthropy, whether that's the city, whether that's faith-based community, the community at large, community centers, it's everybody saying that we want to address the problem, who wants to be a part of the solution, but we can't do it without a functioning public housing agency either. I mean, because the system has certain things in it in terms of, who's getting housed and the order that they're getting housed. So you need all of that working together. Otherwise, some people will get housed and others will still be left out. And so it's going to take, man, I'm a man of faith. I believe in miracles. And one of the miracles we need to have is our coming together to get to a solution to say we're serious about doing this. And that simply means holding everybody accountable. Rather than trying to run from it and try to own something that's bigger than you are, let's just hold everybody accountable. Everybody be held accountable. Whether that's the mayor's committee on homelessness, whether that's the Blueprint Council, whether that's CHIP, whether that's IHA, whether that's the city, whoever it is, the service providers, we hold everybody accountable. Less finger pointing at other people and saying, okay, we need to fix this. Is it possible to fix it? Yes, because other cities have done it. We do have to have the willingness, and we have to be willing to hold one another accountable and not take it personal.
If I remember the question correctly, the answer is no. Because I believe the question is, can we solve this without a fully functioning, successful public housing agency? Am I right, Amanda? Okay. And I don't think that there, even with all the wonderful philanthropy, and there's a whole lot of people doing a whole lot of direct service in this room. There's a lot of expertise, so I'm looking forward to hearing from other folks. But my little part of the world is I don't see unhoused people. We don't see unhoused people very often in eviction court. We see people who are about to be unhoused, right? We see the prequel to homelessness. And people get evicted in the courts where we work, and I think that's true across the county, where there's 500 new eviction cases filed this week. There'll be 500 more next week and 500 more the week after that. They're getting evicted, they're losing their homes, they're becoming unhoused for 2 reasons. One, they cannot afford for-profit corporate landlord rent. And number 2, although they are eligible for it, they cannot get subsidized housing. And that second piece, a robust subsidized housing program, and understanding that IHA oversees the vouchers as well as the public housing units. And having one of the other things our clinic does is sue IHA on the regular. So I will say, it's not usual for me to say up here and say IHA needs to be, IHA is the secret to the success here, the silver bullet, but it is, because there's, as to Wild's point, 25,000 people already rely on it. There can be more, there should be more. And what happens is we don't see them in eviction court. They've got issues, but they can pay their rent. And so when the discussion was, what about these other communities? What about the times where we see places that they don't have overwhelming numbers in eviction courts? They don't have overwhelmed shelters. They don't have people sleeping under overpasses, et cetera. Those are places with very high functioning public housing agencies, right? Internationally and nationally and historically, because as Wild Style, our host, are you the host or MC? What are you? Has written about, here in Indianapolis and Lockfield Gardens in particular, we have seen public housing done right. And it can happen, it can be done, and this group in our community, we can insist on that, and that to me is the answer to the question. That has to be part of it, at the core of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I just want to call out, like, how badass it is that he like does take IHA to court. And when I really got, past my emotions and started looking through some of these news articles, I saw that and I was like, whoa, you know what, Amanda? You need to edit what you're saying, because there's some really great advocacy going on right here, because this is awesome. So congratulations and thank you for that. And that's why I invited you.
Well, can I add that I teach at IU McKinney Law School that students are the ones who do this work. I just watch them do all the work, right? So the students are the ones leading it. They're the first ones to go to Lugar Tower and start walking through and say, here's a picture of human feces that is outside our client's doorway. Here is the blood from the shooting from last week. And any one of us who sees this, I think, would react the same way.
And this is also where it became easier for me to draw the connection between what is permanent supportive housing and then like IHA, because like Lugar Towers. So I worked in a permanent supportive housing building that was funded a little bit differently, but basically does the same thing, right? And so, but they always try to act like they're two different things. They do two different things, but they don't. Anyway, same damn story, right? Like when I would come home at night, I would have to take off my clothes in a white trash bag immediately when I would get home, right? And take that immediately to my washing machine so that I didn't end up with like bed bugs and cockroaches in my house where my child and I lived, right? Because they crawled all over my office, right? And so when I read what was in the court files, I said, oh my God, that's exactly the same thing that happened over here. This is not any different at all, right? And I think Wild Style can help us a little bit later too with that, drawing that nexus. But I'm gonna jump to the next question real quick so we can keep moving along. How many housing vouchers or available housing units exist to house people outside of what the Indianapolis Housing Agency is given from the federal government? Do you guys understand the question, or do you need clarification?
Yeah, I understand the question. I just don't know if I have the answer.
Okay. Yeah, so how many housing vouchers or available housing units exist to house people outside of what the Indianapolis Housing Agency is given from the federal government? Basically, to me, what this question says is, what is the city doing? What's the mayor doing? Because he got elected on being the person that was going to do something about homelessness.
Like Lawrence and Beech Grove and Speedway and other places inside of Marion County, or are they counted separate, or do they even have anything?
It would all go through IHA as my there's going to be you know what? They make that really freaking complex so that they have something to do. But I'm just going to leave the answer at that. But yes, I mean, the question really though is to me again, am I following you right on this, Wild Style? Like, is there anything else going on besides this, or is this all we have to rely on? Because this seems pretty desperate.
Well, one of the reasons I asked that question is because there hasn't been a push, when they talk about creating these councils for getting the Section 8 program in order in IHA. And so unless they're going to come up with it outside of a IHA, we're going to have a whole lot of homelessness continuing and getting actually worse.
So is the answer no?
Well, it was a number, and I don't think anybody knows the number. I know 328 more units have been created since 2019, but the homelessness numbers have gone up. And I think that's because, again, permanent supportive housing is not supposed to house everybody.
So is this something where we all, I don't know, help me, is this where the affordable housing pipeline, is that part of this answer?
Well, that's what I was going to briefly speak on. Is I love, Reverend Green, what you said about accountability has to be for all of us, right? It can't just be pointing fingers and blaming any one individual or office or agency. And I do think, Fran, to your point, that IHA has to become functional, highly functional for this to work. I will say, though, I found myself unable to vote for the budget that was passed this year because the amount of housing support was, I believe, 36 units of master lease permanent supportive housing. Out of a $1.6 billion city budget, we spent about $545,000 on affordable housing. And so, granted, the federal government is the predominant funding source for affordable housing, and it should be. But given our known issues with IHA, I find it totally unacceptable that such a small percentage of the city's budget went to what the city could do to help alleviate the problem. And we've seen the streets. We know the funding's not extra in DPW. I'm not saying it wouldn't be very hard decisions, but while people are out in this cold, that has to be a priority that I haven't seen from this administration.
I'll just briefly say I'm not sure anybody has a number wild style. I mean, it comes down to, we talked about the master leasing program. Is it going to continue to grow? Hopefully, but we don't know who those landlords are, where that is. So I'm, from my lens, I'm not sure anybody could give you an exact number and say this amount is there. I would say whatever it is, it's probably woefully short. I would probably, if I was a betting man, I would bet on that. But where it comes from, the push for it, it's multiple lanes, and we're way short of where we need to be. So you can move on to the next question.
All right. So if IHA is forced to sell off property, how long would it be before these properties would no longer be federally subsidized affordable housing? So if you want me to say it one more time, or are you ready? He's ready. Let's go.
We got the questions in advance. As a
Oh,
professor,
good.
I think Wildstyle gave us the cheat sheet before we went. So you may have heard discussion, and actually mostly be rumor, that some of these IHA properties, well, they are troubled, right? There's a lot of them. Luker is one of them, but Barton and others. Concord Village, if folks know, is like the big problems. So sometimes there's been a discussion for many years, like at some point IHA may just throw up their hands and say, okay, we're done with this. It's valuable property, some of it's cited. Fortunately, there is law that prevents that from happening easily, that anyone purchasing these buildings would actually be obligated to make sure that they're still affordable at the way they are now, which kind of circles back to my point about when Wild asked what my 3 priorities would be for this discussion about how to tackle housing insecurity and how to tackle homelessness. The 3 priorities are IHA, IHA, and IHA. Because IHA, we've talked about IHA and we've talked about the city. The city is IHA. It's always been IHA. It's always had a lot of control, even though you don't hear a lot of that from the 25th floor of the city county building. That's IHA has always been under the city's control because the mayor and the council have controlled the board before the board got taken away. But the board got taken away because the city and HUD are now very formally in charge of IHA. So when we talk about the city stepping in, I think Amanda mentioned that, the city is IHA and IHA is the city. And again, when we talk about maybe there's a few hundred units here and there's maybe a dozen units here, 25,000, right? 25,000 in total of vouchers and units that the IHA administers now. Can we do that better? Can we do it the way we legally should be doing it? And can we expand on that with the infrastructure that is there, as faulty as it is? So that's the task for the city leadership in my mind.
I would say this is where the community gets involved to push this relationship between city and IHA is one where these units get fixed, they get repaired where they are livable, so that IHA doesn't have 500 units that aren't livable. So we can get people, get them housed, etc. But this is where we all play a part. So we can all say to our counselors and other people who work in the city, the mayor, etc. Hey, in this relationship between the two of you, since it's so tight, we need to fix this, have it fully functional, have units that people can truly live in, and get people housed. But that's going to take, resources and focus and willingness to do that. And going back to accountability, we got to hold everybody accountable for making that happen and not get caught up in the finger pointing game. And that'll leave a lot of people more homeless or, arguing over whoever does buy it, because I hope that it always stays within the love of Indianapolis and not some outside investor. That could be extremely ugly.
Hey, I just have a question for you. How do we do this? So we need to do some things, but how do we go about doing them? And would it help to start with zoning laws, changing some of those so we can get some housing built differently?
I'm going to start this off, but the only person that IHA is in a terrible state, that is, I don't believe the city has enough money by itself to cover it, even if that's what the mayor was doing. At this point, the only person that can save IHA is somebody that's going to fundraise and ask for the money from the philanthropy, from corporate sponsors, whatever it takes, and that is the mayor of Indianapolis. It can't be the other councils that he's created. It can't be the people that work for him. The biggest philanthropies in the state, and we have some really big ones, like we do, and they're not going to answer the phone for anybody in this room.
However, what is it the MDC, the Metropolitan Development Committee, right? So that is where all the you're absolutely on the right track. That is where the zoning stuff happens, right? And that committee does, in my opinion, answers directly to the mayor. Am I right? So that committee is also where all of the codification for homeless policy happens within DMD, right? And then they throw the criminalization side, like the actual management, over to IMPD and OPHS. But so I think you're hitting on the right spot. But to Wild Styles' point, the only way it happens is we have to hold the mayor accountable to make it happen, because the only people that are going to answer that are going to do differently than what they're doing right now are, unless he asks them to do it, they're not going to, right?
And I had just a couple comments on that point. I think when we're talking about accountability and who has the power to affect things, we also have to, how do we fix it is a problem, but what exactly is broken and how broken is it is, I think, a root issue that we don't even have the answers for yet. And that's what I find myself most frustrated with. What I've heard directly from Kimberly Wise is the woman's name, who is the single board member who now is in charge of IHA under the Cooperative Endeavor Agreement we just entered. She's told me twice this is the worst run public housing agency in the country. But I haven't seen that in the newspaper, right? I haven't seen any open books like, here is what's wrong. Here's how deep the problem goes. We need an angel investor. We need somebody to come in and help save the day. And so I think from my experience, everyone is very reluctant from the philanthropy community to come in and own a piece of the problem, because they don't know how big of a piece that's going to turn out to be. They don't know how much maintenance work was supposed to have been done, but it maybe lined somebody's pockets. The last conversation I had with the current leadership of IHA was in September, and at that point they were unwilling to say definitively that this wouldn't end with someone going to prison for mismanagement or embezzlement of funds. They didn't know that for sure, but when I first met with them in April, right around the time of the Cooperative Endeavor Agreement was signed, they were saying, now we don't think that that's the case. And in September they said, that comment we made before, let's retract that and put it back to a we don't know. That's a problem, right? But legal investigations can take some time, especially in a dysfunctional agency whose phones got locked out for a year. So we can't just not let the public know that there is a massive, major problem. Even if we don't have all the details yet, we have to make this more of a topic of conversation and not just hidden behind closed doors. I personally am frustrated because at the meeting in September, I was told, that same rumor that Fran mentioned, that we may have to end up selling off properties because we literally don't have another solution that won't end up with thousands of people, more people on the street. Not talking about the misused vouchers or the not used vouchers. I'm talking about people who are currently in IHA public housing who would end up on the streets if they didn't find a funding solution because they couldn't come up with maintenance money. And I've asked ever since then, cool, give me a back of the napkin math about how much money would it take to rescue these buildings. And then I will wear holes in the knees of my jeans, crawling around and asking every philanthropy partner in town to help me pay for this, right? Take out a second mortgage on my place and see what I can do to chip in, right? But they have yet to even give me that rough estimate of this problem that they were okay talking to me about 4 months ago. The last 3 emails I've sent to them since November have gone unanswered entirely, and I'm a city councilor, y'all. So I don't understand how anybody else can help solve the problem when we're literally all just being kept in the dark.
Actually, that takes to my point exactly. The city has been control of the IHA for how many years now? And okay, good. Okay, has the city been the solution? Has the city done anything towards homeless but make it worse? No. All right. Didn't they also get taken away by HUD because they weren't doing a good job? And so we're trying to say that IHA is the solution, the city is the solution. I think we're the solution. We're the advocates. We're the activists. We have to take and we have to be accountable. We have to act on our civic duty as people in the United States to actually address these issues. Because right now, the state housing agency, we're talking about no money. Well, they gave $20 million to the Indianapolis Low Barrier Homeless Shelter. $20 million for a homeless shelter. The homeless shelter is $32 million. And what is this homeless shelter going to do but hold maybe 38 people? Yep. Yeah, so okay, we have $20 million. We've got this thing that's not going to be made until 2026. Why are we not taking action on this? This is $32 million, right, that we can have for a homeless shelter, but we can't. How many small houses would that make? How many communities could we make around Indianapolis surrounded around homeless people where we can actually give them homes? Okay, we have money. We have political will. We just have to enact it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It is going to be political will, and it will have to come from us. And I think the mayor actually agrees that the only answer is political will as well. So I think that might be one thing we agree with them on.
He just doesn't always agree with getting.
I just don't think he thinks that we'll do it. So there's another question over here on Facebook that I want to ask real quick, and then it is, how does Unigov impact this issue? Someone may need to explain what Unigov is. Pastor, you want to take that question first? Fran? Okay, yeah.
We'll give you the legal answer.
Oh my God, Unigov is old now, right? We're talking about 1970s. Essentially, Unigov is something that probably all of us are just used to at this point, where essentially all of Marion County is the city of Indianapolis. It's all one unit of government, except for when we want to segregate and discriminate. So then we have separate school districts, et cetera, et cetera. But the question, I guess, I haven't really thought about it that way, but it really should be that Unigov should help the problem, and that there should be a broader tax base of presumably wealthier districts to help support some of the more lower income districts. But again, to your point, I hear your frustration, and I don't think it's either or. It's we have to take individual action, we have to provide mutual aid, and we have to respond individually. But at the scale it's going to take here, I don't, Jesse's second mortgage aside, I think we're going to need a little bit more than that. And the federal and city government have the resources in the system. Again, the current IHA, the IHA we're talking about for the last multiple decades, is not the solution. Making it and making the mayor do better, which is what we, the people, can have such an important role. And as Pastor Green said, that, in my opinion, is the solution. And Unigov should ideally mean that some of the wealthier areas of Washington Township can help support some of the needs in Center and Wayne, et cetera. So.
I think that answered the question pretty doggone well. Are any of the homelessness council convened by the city empowered to address the issues with our public housing agency, IHA? Okay, so who sets the schedules for homeless camps to be closed? I know this. Go ahead.
Sure.
No, you go.
So I ran into this because Browns Corner Park is in my district. It's at the corner of Washington and what is that? Emerson. Yeah, just south of my house. It is a park that's very poorly utilized, and there was an encampment of people who were camping outside, staying there. I got word from some mutual aid friends and comrades that there was the risk of a mass eviction from that camp, and this is this fall a couple months ago. And so I personally reached out to Chief of Police, reached out to Andrew Merkley from the city's homelessness OPHS department, and I reached out to the Parks Department. And I got 3 different answers from all 3 of them, although they all agreed that every one of those agencies was involved in trying to collaborate and coordinate a response. You know, I was personally told by the chief of police that only one individual was actually the problem, and so the police didn't have any desire to evict the entire camp. There was just one person who had been setting fires. You can't have that near homes. To me, that was kind of like okay, you've been warned like 8 times, I think they said. It's hard for me to really fight to stop him from being moved along. Then the camp was cleared anyway. And I don't think it's because Chris Bailey lied to me. I think it's because it is a totally dysfunctional and leaderless group of different departments who are trying to coordinate and figure this out. You know, I do know that there is conflict between different department leaders who have different stances on the best way to handle homelessness as an epidemic, and then also specifically in our parks. And I can frankly see both sides. You know, I'm the most like bleeding heart person in the world, but letting people take over a park and then pretending they don't exist does not seem to me a great solution. You know, a lot of folks are staying in the parks because it's more out of the way and they can kind of hide back away from the public eye so they don't have someone constantly looking in at them. And I totally understand that, and people deserve dignity and privacy. But I don't think that the people who are walking past them, deserve the dignity and privacy not to have to look people in the eyes and realize that this is a policy choice we're making. So to answer your question, who is coming up with the solution? I don't think anybody is right now. I think it's 3 or 4 different departments fighting over it, and sometimes one department wins, sometimes another department wins, and they're not notified about what's going on. Another quick, I'm not going to rant too much longer, I promise, but you know, yesterday we announced that we were adopting an extra warming shelter. Multiple people within the administration reached out to let me know that was an incredibly dysfunctional decision that was made late in the day because there was no unified response and no direction from leadership about we need to get this done, find the resources to make it happen. So I just find that incredibly
Which is entirely unacceptable.
Yes.
Okay. That is political violence. Again, like I said in the very beginning. Go ahead, Buster. Go ahead.
Just briefly, I want to say, one of the things we can do better as a city is that the Department of Homelessness should be one department.
Yep.
And we don't have that in our city. You got to go to DMD. You got to go to the Office of Public Health and Safety. You might have to go to we got too many places. It needs to all be in one roof, one department, or one floor, rather, so that there is a synergy, there is a togetherness, and we don't make the mistakes we're making now because we got 5 different people who might make a choice tonight that would impact homelessness, as opposed to it being in one place in one department or part of a floor, whatever that looks like. But it's divided, and therefore our solutions, our answers, our responses are all divided.
I just want to tie a bow a little bit on like the last couple of questions. Oh, is there somebody down here? You know, like, so when COVID happened, there was the mayor's resiliency plan, but that came after the anti-displacement plan, right? And so where they said they had to start working really quickly was these places where there was nobody coming to work anymore because of COVID, right? They needed to change. Those were also exactly the homeless camps that were downtown. Like, those were exactly the first things that were targeted too. So to answer that question on who decides where the homeless camps, you know, come down, it's complicated.
Forgive me, and this is just my perspective as an educator. I'm not making an indictment of anybody at the city. You said there's 5 different departments, which this same thing happens in education too. Then there's 5 different paychecks. So I don't know how you solve that.
I mean, I'm welcome to arguments against that. Are you ready? Are we good on there? Why don't city leaders have DPW provide trash service to known homeless camps?
I know I've had a ton of different conversations with a bunch of different organizations, city departments, nonprofits, CHIP, Horizon House, trying to figure out what we could productively do short term while we're getting IHA under control, while we're finding more master lease units, et cetera. And one thing that I've not heard an argument against, but I'll give credit to Commander Scott Hessong, who's IMPD Downtown District, works with the homelessness response team in IMPD, who I think do a great job. One thing they suggested was coming up with basically the equivalent of Safe Park Indy, but run through the government, right? A safe place to camp where you have bathrooms, where you have showers, where there's a security guard who makes sure no one's going to come in and mess with you while you're asleep, where somebody picks up the trash. Like just take care of people's basic needs, even knowing they're sleeping in their cars or they're in tiny houses or something like that. Seems like a very cost-effective way to get things done. My suspicion as to why we haven't moved forward on this after these conversations is because that looks really bad, right? It looks really bad when your government is officially acknowledging, hey, all of you people who are living in substandard conditions, we're setting up a shantytown for you. And so I think that this government would rather pretend it's not a problem and then wait, and then in June when the point in time count comes out, make another speech about it.
Did you want to follow up on that? You want to follow up on that at all?
I want to ask a question on that one. I just had a question about that one specifically. How can we get behind that idea? Like, what kind of effort can we put as a community to get this idea and make the city actually acknowledge the problem? Because what do they say with whenever you're an addict, right? You have to admit that you have a problem, right? And Indianapolis has a problem with caring about people. So we got to figure out how we turn Indianapolis into a place for people and not businesses and corporations.
Anybody else? All right, I just gave all my questions away. No, you're fine. That's not the same thing. Oh, what was that? I don't know what that is. Why is one of the $35,000 public restrooms the city bought sitting behind a fence? I don't know. Do we know?
I know what I've been told about the public restrooms when having conversations about this. The city creates these storage container or transport container style public restrooms, and originally they were explicitly said to be for unhoused people to use as a humanitarian thing. Restrooms all over have problems, right? Like, it is a place, if you're going to be using drugs and want to be outside the public eye, you want to shut the door, make sure nobody's going to bother you. It can be a place where you're committing sexual assault. It can be a place where maybe you're having mental health issues and for whatever reason you make a mess of the bathroom. I mean, people have probably seen that in gas stations and truck stops as well, right? It's not unique to unhoused people. They just require a lot of maintenance. And so I think with the original iteration of the public restrooms, there was maybe rose-colored glasses about how much maintenance would be required to make them fit for human use. I think the city correctly saw that there was a problem with that, but then the fix for that problem is taking a while. One thing that the city has pushed for in my district, in the downtown Cole Noble area near the Wheeler Men's Shelter, is a new dog park that will be close by. And I was present at a community meeting in that neighborhood where Andrew Merkley, who is, again, the director of the homelessness group in OPHS, was standing up talking about how they were going to be placing one of the restrooms there in that dog park so that people who were walking their dogs could use the restroom. What? And that's about
If
the
that's
reaction
not
in
indie,
the room.
I don't know what is.
Well, it wasn't true. And everyone in the room knew it wasn't true. Everyone in the room knew it was for the people who were outside and sleeping outside. And I've shared this with Andrew and with Director Vukovic, who was in the room as well, that they lost a ton of credibility from neighbors by not just admitting, hey, there are human beings outside in your neighborhood who need basic living standards. And yes, this restroom is for them. But instead, the administration or the representative of the administration in that room made the decision to pretend that this was an amenity for people walking their dogs, which, most people are walking from their home where they have a restroom, and it's pretty rare that you need to use the restroom while you're out walking your dog. And so some of that, I think, pushback, I have not seen the second restroom unit used since that time. And my suspicion is, oh man, people are mad. Let's just lay low on this for a while. And without anybody's intention, it's just been a lot longer than we think.
So we're spending money on a place for dogs to go to the bathroom, but not.
Or not really.
It's illegal to leave dogs outside in this weather as well. We have a law for that. Why aren't there more public bathrooms downtown?
The budget does not include the money for them.
Pastor, don't you say that's a moral document?
Oh, the budget is a moral document.
But who makes the budget?
The mayor makes the budget. On paper, the city council makes the budget. We are the fiscal body, and this year the city council was unable to get a single amendment passed through due to negotiations with the mayor, which I'm not supposed to be telling you. Whoops. I'm pretty upset, if you can't tell.
We love you, Jesse.
You want to say it again?
I'm a little bit upset. This year, if you notice, there were no amendments to the budget, despite the fact that we had 9 different counselors vote no to it.
Wow.
You might ask why that is, and it's because we were not permitted to engage in amendments with the budget as the fiscal body of this city.
Why?
You'd have to ask the mayor that.
It's called bureaucracy.
Amanda, can I ask a question?
I didn't want
Counselor-
Jesse to get in trouble, but okay.
Well,
This is being streamed, Jesse. It's on the internet, so all right. But go ahead. Go ahead, Rem Alexander. I'll go after that.
our counselor mentioned earlier, the Safe Park project. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Because my understanding is that the city was not, I'll say, too keen or interested in that concept. One of the reasons being security.
For once, I don't have anything.
He said he didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, I love the project. I haven't seen any. Sorry. Love the project. As far as I know, it was entirely individuals or a nonprofit setting it up. I don't think the city was very involved in that. I have not heard even rumors about city support or opposition, but that sounds believable.
Well, maybe I didn't phrase my question correctly. You kind of answered it. I wanted to make sure that folks knew that the city was not involved in that. That is not-for-profit agencies. And what that means as far as trying to hold the city accountable for that. And how can the city maybe support that effort?
Yeah, I think that it would be very easy to support that effort, right? I mean, it would be pretty simple to ask for security there, to help subsidize it in some way, even if it's just matching funds, even if it's the city, to your point. I mean, campaign finance reports just came out. They were required to be in at noon today. So every politician you know was probably freaking out and trying to make sure all their numbers were in order. So I was glancing at those, and you know, the Simon family gave $75,000 directly to Joe Hogsett last year. He's not running for an election again, maybe ever, but not for mayor for the next couple of years, and he said he won't run for mayor again. So he was having conversations and receiving $75,000 for himself. To me, it seems like he could have used that opportunity to raise some money for, say, Park Indy or for any of these programs.
Yeah. So I have a question for the counselor. I know you mentioned that you guys are the fiscal body, but yet we're not able to get any amendments through. So if homelessness was something the council truly cared about, why don't they just push it through regardless if the mayor wants it or not?
At this point, I think I would get in trouble for answering more specifics. Trust me that we have thought about it and want to, and due to the mayor's administration, don't feel that we can without jeopardizing the financial status of the city.
And the way that our local government is designed is the mayor has a lot of power, right? So it is a strong mayor system, right? So if you're one of those people like me who goes and finds a book on how to figure out how to organize HUD files, then, you go through and you start looking up what that means to have a strong mayor system. But to put it simply, the only person that can change this is the mayor. Right? Is there one more question? Does anybody else have a question? Yeah, who in this room is going to run for mayor next? Me! No, I don't know. You know what? I will absolutely heed that wisdom. Okay, which Marion County courts have the highest eviction rates, and what are the counselors in that district doing to address these issues?
I don't know how my rate compares, but
You have Center Township. So Center is number 2, and Wayne Township is number 1. In fact, I think Wayne Township evicted 1 month more people than the entire consolidated city and county of Fort Wayne in it. I know you're working, but there are a lot of counselors in Center Township, and there are a lot of counselors in Wayne Township. And so I put that question. I wrote all the questions. I know I knew the answer to many of them, but it is something to consider that our politicians do have to be more engaged. Not many of them need to be more engaged about what's going on. And I think Fran can probably speak on some things because he works directly with the eviction courts or in there.
Oh, I have thoughts. Okay. Settle in. No. In terms of elected officials, what maybe we don't know when we look at these down ballot races, that our township small claims judges are elected officials. They're all elected every 4 years. And what happens I'll tell you some of the lines, right? If you're the line between Center Township and Warren Township, which side of the street you live on when you're getting evicted can mean whether you become homeless or not, because one judge is going to say you got to get out in 5 days, and one judge is going to give you 3 weeks and work well with you and try to figure out a way around it. They have a huge amount of discretion. I got to say, as a lawyer, I had to learn something. I've been a lawyer for a minute, as you might tell. I had a long, flowing, dark hair at one point as a lawyer. But I used to think that eviction cases for people who had for-profit landlords was not a good use of time because, I didn't have their rent check for them, right? If they didn't have their rent, eventually they're going to get evicted. But what I learned, that's not true, because any kind of advocacy that we do as lawyers, but as we do as community with these judges who are elected, to give people time, because time means they can find the money to catch up on rent. Time means they can find the other place to be. Time means that they can get the tax return comes through and they can find the next home they're going to be in, or have grandma take the kids and then they can go to the hotel for a little while. Time means everything. And we have some judges in Marion County who will give the default mode is you have a Thursday hearing, you're out by Tuesday. And you might have gotten notice of this hearing maybe just 10 days before. We've got some judges who will say, okay, let's talk about 3 weeks, but maybe we can need longer if you've got a plan to catch up. And that judge, and the judges who do that, and they're on the Far East Side, and some of the landlords bypass them for that reason, will actually try to figure out a way to keep people housed. So these eviction courts, we have in Indiana, in Indianapolis, by most measures, one of the highest eviction rates in the country. Well, we also have pretty cheap housing, right? It's not cheap enough. But so why is the case that we have more evictions? It's because we make evictions fast, we make them cheap, and we make them easy. And our court system does it. It doesn't have to do it. The judges we elect are responsible for that. So if when these judges are up for election in 2 years, I think the small claims judges and the trustees are all up for election, those elections matter. Because those judges matter. They have literally dozens and dozens of people each week where they're going to decide whether those families become homeless or not. And they don't have to make it so that it's just a landlord eviction machine, but some of those courts are.
I just briefly want to say thank you. Thank you for saying that I'm working. That said, I could be digging up a hole over here and moving the dirt over to here, and that's working, right? But does that actually achieve anything? And so Right now, I don't think I'm being very effective, and I judge myself pretty harshly. Not going to say any negative words about any other counselor, but I know a lot of work. Everybody could be working. The mayor could be working very hard. I don't care. I'm talking about results. I don't care for my own efforts. I don't care for anybody else's. We have to judge ourselves based on what we accomplish and hold ourselves accountable and be transparent about where we failed.
Yeah, I mean, I have some compassion for that. I know that, personally, I definitely tried to fix it myself as much as I could because I didn't feel like there was anybody else I could rely on. There was just a few people. And so, what ragtag team I could take along that I could build to, whatever alliances I could build to save lives, that's what I did, right? Shit almost killed me, literally. Right? So don't feel bad about it. But, sorry. Sorry, Reverend Alexander. That's the truth, though. And so we got to do it together, right? And I think a lot of us feel like the same way, so I want you to know that, you're not alone in that, but I think together we can do something, right? So we are out of questions. What do you want to just I'm gonna let you.
Can we Sorry, can we leave with some action items that you want us all to do? Do we all need to write the mayor?
We got 30 minutes. What do you want to do?
Oh, yeah, I want some action items. I don't know. I feel like writing all these people could be a full-time job, though.
Well, I mean, there's one person I think we've identified. There is one person that we've identified that has the most power over the situation. They control the budget. They control the Indianapolis Housing Agency. They even probably can make phone calls or at least have people answer their phone calls that nobody else in this room is likely to be able to make. So previously I had said, well, write your counselor. At this point, I think it's write the mayor. Ask to speak to him. Ask what he is doing about this. We need help, particularly. I don't know when they're going to finish investigating IHA, but we need help now. People need their Section 8 vouchers covered. We need more people on Section 8 instead of on the streets. When I look at that point in time count last year and 25%, that was over 400 people out there with the adult and child. More than likely, if you have kids out there, you probably could have gotten a public housing assistance. That's one of the more easy people to go house when it comes to public housing. I can't speak for everybody else out there, but that's usually a low bar of being able to house somebody. And so I don't want to blame everybody. I think there's a lot of people doing good work. I think there are some people that the city has listened to that do bad work and have made the situation worse, but I think we need to encourage the mayor. I think the mayor is going to have to be the fundraiser. He's going to have to be the leader. He's going to have to be the cheerleader of getting corporate investment, getting philanthropy to get involved, because we don't know, like Jesse said, we don't know how much money IHA is in the hole. What we do know is that 25,000 people depend on them, and by all the news reports, a lot of people haven't been able to depend on them already. Like, there's housing problems with the people they're housing. They've been ghosting people's landlords and not paying the rent, and then they're getting evicted. So as much as I love to talk bad about city councilors, except with the exception of Jesse and a few other people. But I think I have given Jesse a piece of my mind as well. But he's more engaged than most of them. But this is something that I don't know that a counselor, I don't know if these corporations, these philanthropies are going to get on the phone with the city councilors. I think it's going to take the elected leader of this city, and that's Mayor Hogsett.
Totally agree with all of that. I do also think, I mean, I'm serious. I'm going to get in some trouble for the stuff I said here tonight. And think about that. And think about the fact that if I'm not your counselor maybe doesn't know all those things, because I've had a lot of meetings that not everybody has, but knows most of those things. And they've never talked to you about it. Why is that? It's because they would get in trouble from this administration if they did. And that trouble would mean a primary challenger, like ruining their political career. I've had constituents of mine who criticize the mayor online, threatened that grant funding will be turned off, they'll lose their jobs. So there's fear there, but that means your counselor might want to hear from you that, hey, I care about this issue and I expect some political courage. I'm just saying, I'm not saying anybody who's not doing a good job of my peers. I have a really great set of people I'm working with, but you don't hear them saying this stuff publicly. And if you'd like that, you should encourage that. The last action item, besides the one Wild mentioned and that, the point in time count is coming up here just in a couple weeks. And there was a rescheduled virtual training. I did it for the first time last year, so I'm not some angel who's been doing it forever, not like Amanda, right? But I found it eye-opening and really worthwhile. So I would strongly encourage you, sign up, volunteer. You can do a training online from 11 to 1 on Saturday. If you go to CHIP's website, if you just Google CHIP Indy, you can sign up for that. It's just a matter of a couple hours of your time. You do get trained on it, and it really is eye-opening, and you get to kind of see the humanity in some of the folks sleeping outside.
I just echo what Wild said. You look to other cities and other communities where they do much, much better. And they do much, much better in significant part because they've got a leader of the community, a mayor who stands up and says that housing first is a priority in this community and I'm going to be accountable for it. I'm going to keep you informed about it. They have a mayor and a city council, an empowered city council who take their local housing agency and buttress it, support it, provide extra funding, provide extra administrative support, which we desperately need here. There is the elected mayor of the city of Indianapolis, I think, is the person who can stand up and make the biggest difference here. And to the point we've heard a couple of times, he's not doing it, but he will do it if enough of us push it. And Pastor Green made that point earlier, is that advocacy and organizing and pushing the mayor to do much better and make it as big a priority as whatever funding for IMPD or whatever else got the money in the budget, right? Mostly IMPD. If we can make that a priority because people know that they're going to lose elections if they don't do the right thing, that's up to us.
All I can say is amen to that.
Pastor, could you also help explain housing first and just kind of how that permanent supportive housing, we talk about housing first, right? But IHA, we don't necessarily, but what is housing first and how does that make sense?
Well, short version of this is housing first. We want to get people housed, not that they have to meet some criteria in order to get housed. If they're in need of housing, let's get them housed. Let's get them the services that they need. And we need to move this to be a priority. And we do that. I do believe public pressure impacts policy. So if our voices rise, and obviously to the mayor, but even to other city, county councilors, whoever your counselor is, you're not blessed to have Jesse Brown. You've got somebody else. You got to give them some cover by saying this is an issue. And you do have to remember when election time comes around, because this problem has been here for a minute. So we got to remember it. We got to push for it. We got to demand it, lift our voices up, and say we want this addressed because we know it can be addressed. And when you look at a budget that doesn't have anything there much, then okay, they don't plan to do much. And that should be problematic for all of us who are taxpayers. And we got to give support to those. Councilor Brown, he's willing to come out and face the community on an issue that he knows that the city is getting slammed on. So we don't attack Jesse because he was willing to come. We got to go talk to the other ones who weren't coming tonight, who know about this and don't choose to come. We got to lift our voices up. And then we still got, eventually IHA will get a director. So we got to say, hey, director, who are you and what are you planning to do? And say, here's our concerns. And on down the line with all the other groups that are connected to this. And as I stated when we started, there has to be accountability. And if you're in the wrong spot, you don't want to be held accountable. If you're the service provider, whoever you are, because nobody can do it in a silo. It's going to take all of us. And some people's job will be to raise Cain. There has to be some people who are always fussing and saying, why ain't this done? We need that too. That's part of the mission in order to drive some change. Because if we get quiet, I mean, the sad part is there are people that are going to freeze to death tonight. We don't have a goal out there saying we're trying to reduce the number of deaths of homeless people per year under 100. We don't have that as a goal in this city. We are letting people, over 100 people, die every year. And just a couple of years ago, it was over 200 that died on the streets of Indianapolis. Well, I ain't talking about the ones that just got frostbite and lived. I'm talking about the people who literally died in Indianapolis, our wealthy city. And that should be unacceptable. And we should say enough is enough. And we ought not be afraid to lift our voices and deal with whatever, pushback we get because of that. Because people are literally going to die tonight. And in a couple of days, when it's a high of 3, there will be people dying. And I pray that it hits your conscience to say, this is why I got to say something and do something, because that is unacceptable. And most of us, if it not for the grace of God, we might be one of the people out on the streets.
Hi. I've been trying to not say anything because I tend to get on a soapbox and I'll go on and on. I don't even know where to start. I do think where to start, though, is maybe starting a task force. I do not think writing letters to our mayor is going to work, or reaching out to the mayor. He's had plenty of opportunities to change this, and he hasn't done it. It's going to be people just starting a task force, working together where we get bigger and bigger until it's so big that they have to do something about it. That's the only reason that we had family winter contingency this year. It was not going to happen. The city knew for a long time that it wasn't going to happen. They were very aware that Wheeler didn't have the capacity to do this. It was only because we are part of a group through the Continuum of Care that we held a meeting together, and a couple of providers said, we don't know what to do. We know that there have been some conversations behind closed doors, and the city came to us and they expect us to take care of it, but we don't have the capacity to take care of it. It's not, they didn't. So I said in that meeting, well, let's start sending out emails and reaching people that we know. We did that. We had a larger meeting where OPHS did show up, specifically Andrew Merkley. And it was because there were a couple of reporters that showed up at that. It was a very civil community meeting together that we got things done. It started out, though, before that with somebody from the city saying that it wasn't their responsibility. Another service provider turned around and said, but it's the right thing to do. And so we found out that there was a little bit of money that was there that was available, but suddenly when we came to that meeting, the amount had doubled. And then after that, it doubled again because the city got involved with these other individuals that have the capacity, philanthropists, to help us. And they put money in the pot, but it wasn't until the voice was louder and louder. And it's going to be that way. We can leave this meeting tonight and say, we'll be upset, we'll go home, and we'll be having negative conversations about our city and what our city's not doing right. Or we can start a task force and just start doing that. Everybody has their own gifts. So where Fran is gifted in the judicial area with people who are about to become evicted. There are people here that can help with prevention. They have the gifts of doing that, or they know people who can do that. I do permanent supportive housing, and I can tell you why permanent supportive housing does not work. I'm building my own community on the Far East Side with tiny homes. But I'm doing that because I know that permanent supportive housing, the way it's set up currently, is not working. We also have street outreach. We have a professional-based street outreach team for the city. It is not working because there aren't enough people. I mean, we need more people. I keep saying we need more people on the field. But when we just sit here going round and round in circles, just talking about what's not working, nothing changes. So the only way we're going to be able to get our city to change is to create a louder voice. And then they'll be forced to change. That's all that's going to work.
I need you to understand how Councilor Brown was talking about how you're not supposed to talk about certain things, right? So when you're a service provider on the inside and you're the one that has to look someone in the eyes and say, I'm sorry, they don't have a winter contingency program this year, and it's Friday and it's 4:00 and I see that your baby needs Pampers and I don't know how I'm going to go home and sleep this weekend, but I don't know what to do, right? They found a solution and they're brave enough to be here, so I want to really commend that, right? And I also want to say that's exactly how it always happens. That's the only reason anything ever gets done. We can talk about permanent supportive housing and does it work and does it not work. I'm always personally going to be an advocate of housing first and permanent supportive housing. However, when it is done in a way that is not perverse. What you see happening in Indianapolis is not housing first, except for maybe a small little bubble, right? We don't even have permanent supportive housing light. We have a few buildings with some cockroaches and bed bugs that will throw people in and leave them there and blame them for why they can't get better and then evict them and house the next person. That's what permanent supportive housing looks like in Indianapolis, which is exactly the way Lugar Tower looks like, which is exactly what Fran was talking about. And that's why people say that permanent supportive housing doesn't work. And that is upsetting because it does work. And it is the solution. Just they're pulling the wool over your eyes. What they're doing is not permanent supportive housing. What they're doing is gaslighting you, and it's political violence.
Hi, friends. Just a note that not only is this a city issue, but there are two really concerning pieces of legislation that have been introduced at the Indiana General Assembly. So House Bill 1662 would prohibit any state or local funding to be used for housing first policies. And so that is up for testimony soon. And then Senate Bill 161 prohibits public camping. So if you're interested at all in testifying against these pieces of legislation before you leave tonight, let me know. I'm coordinating kind of a small group to do that. Thank you.
And what was your name?
My name's Gray Lassane. I work at Christ Church Cathedral on the Circle, and since we're the church closest to the State House, we take the responsibility of being there and showing up. Thanks.
Thank you for being here, and everyone, yes, definitely make that connection. All right, who else? Where are we going?
Good evening. To Gray's point on that note, as we simultaneously consider the major shifts that everyone in this room and potentially people outside this room want to see at the political level, local, state, and even federal, I would venture to say, while we simultaneously strategize for those kinds of solutions, right, I'm wondering if this group or a potential task force in the near future would also be interested in looking at some more immediate action, more immediate coalition building. Especially, I was going to ask you, Pastor Green, actually, leveraging, I've heard of programs like PAD in Chicago, and leveraging what buildings do exist, what organizations would come to the table, not even considering philanthropic organizations, right? But just the people power and the compassion power, like everyone in this room is most likely feeling right now. How can we connect and build a network of support that would at least provide additional temporary shelter or additional mutual aid? I think a lot of that is happening already, but I personally am not aware of what scope and depth of network we do have. And I think a big piece that's missing for me out of the conversation are our faith-based organizations. And while many of my unsheltered, acquaintances may or may not want to enter shelter in a faith-based organization, I do believe there's enough, a large enough interfaith community here in Indianapolis that would be willing to mobilize. And I'm not sure why that isn't happening. So, you know, if we could discuss that as a group, I would be really grateful.
I guess I'll start it with, I think that, and I'm not the visionary for this event, Wild Style and Amanda, but I think part of what they wanted to do was, quote unquote, build this coalition where there would be voices singing, shouting, making noise around these issues. And I think that's why collectively we're here. I don't believe there's one silver bullet. So I see, okay, are there some tiny homes being built? Yep. But we don't have enough to get all the way there to all ends of town to solve that. So it's a piece of the solution, along with a number of other things that we have talked about tonight. For me, I see this is it. You know, this is the coming together, because you do need people from all walks of life. We need somebody that's on the city county council, if it even one vote for right now. We don't know down the line. We know we got to get to 13, but you start with one. And it is faith-based community coming. It is service providers coming. It is media coming, because you do need media, because media helps drive public pressure. We need these stories elevated so community members will be aware of it. I guarantee you, most people don't know 100-some people die every year here in Indianapolis that's homeless. But we got to make that known. I think that will prick at people's hearts if they go, that many people dying? And it's because there is no one silver bullet. I wish there were. It's going to take all of it. And we needed philanthropy. Philanthropy was in the room, because we have to have, it's going to take some money to do this stuff. We need service providers. If you need building stuff, you still need materials. You got to have some money from somewhere. We deceiving ourselves if we think we don't need some money. So how do we get there? So it's that group of people who are like-minded on the issue that come together and say, we want this fixed, we want this fixed, repeatedly. And there are faith-based people that don't subscribe totally that you got to do it, quote unquote, Wheeler's way, but we'll say, okay, yeah, we need a house. These are our brothers and sisters. How do we do that? Because in Indianapolis, we don't do that well. Faith-based outreach and professional blended outreach, there's almost some wall there that says, thou should not work together. Now, who created it is before I got involved, but it exists. But should it exist? No. You know, because we're all trying to help our brothers and sisters. So those things do have to get addressed, but it takes a group of people saying, yeah, we're willing to work together from both sides.
The one other thing I would say there too is, so I have a constituent who talks to me repeatedly about an experience he had that just jaded him so that he doesn't put himself forward and try to be part of the solution anymore. And it is not something that happened in this administration. It's something that happened under our previous mayor, Ballard. This constituent of mine inherited a warehouse downtown that he wasn't using, saw the need from people, you know, out of Wheeler, et cetera, and just started letting people stay in there during the day and provided some coffee and sandwiches, just some light refreshments. And he got cited by the city for serving food without a license and for, you know, habitability issues. And so he was like, okay, and shut it down, and has refused to help ever since. And I'm about the biggest critic of Mayor Joe Hogshead as you'll find, but I do not think that our current mayor would do something like that. But Ted, my constituent, doesn't know that, right? Because we haven't said, hey, 100 people are dying, what can you do? I can help you with the regulations, I can help you with permitting. You know, we can help in a $0 effort from the city, even with the budget, which is a moral document. You know, even given all of my other criticisms, we could just say, hey, work with us, tell us what your problems are if you're trying to help solve this, you know, on a mutual aid level or on just a small donor level. And, you know, we will help try to make sure to pave the path as opposed to hit you with citations or something. So I think that we could easily do that here.
So I feel like I've heard several people try to gear the conversation back towards solutions, right? And so, as the host, I would ask you, what are your next steps? Do you guys plan on having a follow-up meeting where that meeting is solution-based? I think everyone here has articulated well what the issues are, but I think there are a lot of people already crying out saying, well, how do we do that, right? So is there a plan for that?
There is going to be a follow-up. We're going to need to try to get in touch with everybody. I don't know if we call it a task force or whatever, but something needs to be done. And I know that it's going to require pushing individuals to be great leaders. And we can do that. My stance on the issue is that mutual aid, the community is doing as much as they probably possibly can, and it's killing some of us. It is causing mental health issues with people that are out here doing the work, and that we have to demand that the leadership, the people that got elected to do this, to really stand out there and fight with us. We have to have that, and so we're going to be. We will be in touch. I will be in touch, and I'm going to keep on pushing the facts. I know Amanda is going to keep pushing the facts to me, and everybody on this panel is going to keep fighting, and I think everybody in this room has been fighting as well.
I think the question is if we say we're going to show back up in 2 weeks and figure out what that plan is and get started, are y'all going to be here? I think that's my question, right? So absolutely, hold me accountable.
And
I give you that. If you all will be here in 2 weeks, we'll have an answer.
And then I just want to say, it doesn't have to be done in a silo, right? So if people are stressed out, then it's time to reach out, right? It's time to garner support from other avenues. But then also, it doesn't have to be one way, and that's it, right? So, I think someone talked about, holding the administration accountable, and that could be one path, but then there's also a path of the task force path, right? So, that those are some of the things to think about, that it doesn't have to be one answer, one solution, and one path, right?
I agree, but even the task force is what held them accountable on winter contingency. It's a necessary evil, accountability. I hate accountability when it's applied on me half the time. So I understand that, but I mean, there are different ways to be accountable. I think we're going to need the clergy that is closer to the mayor to really have those personal conversations. We're going to need his friends. We need to find all of his friends. We need to find all of our counselors to be persuasive. I'm not going to suppose to know Joe and Jesse's relationship, but I don't know if Jesse has quite the influence with the mayor as other counselors do. But we do need to find people that are going to convince him that this is solvable. We have the resources are available. IHA didn't apply for $4.4 million worth of grants because they were too busy putting out all the other fires, or not putting them out, about a year or two ago. There is so much out there that is just on the table. And why we convene this meeting is because the community is doing too much. Now, they can never do too much, but they are doing too much. This is not something that we can solve by ourselves as much as I would like. I think that if the city government were just functional, the type of work that is being put on, we could have an incredible society in Indianapolis, Indiana. I think that we could get everybody off the streets. But what's happened is that consistently the numbers are going up. The community is putting in more work, and the city is not putting in as much work as they used to. And the result is that the community is getting more burdened. We're getting more stressed out. And the numbers, statistically, I've looked at them. I did a lot of research for this. The numbers are going up. And It's because it's only logical. When you spend a quarter or a 30 of your salary in taxes, you only have so much money, and then when that money is not being used to actually do the things that it's supposed to do, city services. Many of y'all drove here. I took the bus. It was still bad because I had to get out and walk on the streets. But all of this, you understand that we are behind the 8 ball, and as much as I want to say, hey, we're on our own, we're going to have to hold people accountable because they got our money. Like, it's as simple as that. They got our money, and we have to do something. And people, it's not just the city putting up the money. We have all these corporations here. We have the biggest philanthropy in the world. They just have to be brought in to the party. Like they have to be invited in. They have to see that there is leadership, that there is somebody here that is going to be accountable, is going to be the point person that has appointed people to this in the administration to solve these problems. It can't be me. Pastor Green is the head of the COC. It can't be Pastor Green. It can't be anybody in this room. As much as I wish it was, if it was, I would not have spent as much time organizing this with Amanda. If we thought that we already knew all the people that could do it, we would just have the conversations. And I think what I do know is that we have all the people in the room that can be the change makers that can really spark this. That we have that. And we can spark a movement that is going to require action from the people that have our money, that control the budget, and that have the most power and access. As a white man, in a time, in a place that it really pays to be a white man, and we're going to need him to lean into that white privilege.
I think what Wildstyle said at the beginning of it was a movement, and I think that's what we do need. We need a movement, and we talk about how we need to do city action. How do we get the city to react? How do we get it to actually respond to us? That does take time, and that takes a lot of effort and a lot of goodwill. But there are things that as a community we can do. Like we talked about mutual aid groups a lot. Well, they need funding, right? If you have extra money, give it to mutual aid groups, CCMA, Food Not Bombs. These are organizations out there who are doing work. Get out there share on Sundays. They go outside the Central Library right there off the memorial there. So get involved with mutual aid groups. Go out there and donate your winter clothes. I mean, they're doing right now. They're doing different things, like giving homeless people like lanterns, little contained jars. Right? They could use more jars. They could use more funding. And right, they produce maybe about 500 of them. CCMA has, but there could be more. People who are living in their cars could be using these things, and they are contained flames. So go to mutual aid groups. Get involved with a political party that you see you're doing work. Go out there, get on there, go to their meetings, find a meeting in your local neighborhood, find a party, go out there and again, we need to talk to each other, talk to your community members, right? Go out to different events in your community, start a conversation with them. How can we solve the problem? We need to talk to each other again. Get off social media, get off the internet, go to your community, go out there to your churches, go out there to your different organizations out there doing the work. Just, we have to just put effort into it. And I think that if we, resources are out there for this kind of stuff as well. Like I have resources, and we all have resources. We combine them together. We put them out there. And as far as the city goes and how we get that stuff done, well, isn't the city something we voted in? Isn't the mayor? Isn't the city councilors all voted in? We act like the city is something different than what we are as people, right? We need to bring people back in to city government. So that means that as people here, right, maybe you don't know about politics. Well, who cares if you don't know anything about politics? Right. We need to stand up and we need to get together and we need to focus on what we can do as a united force. You know, we need to raise and unite our voices and towards a roar so they can't ignore us.
Yeah, yeah.
Who's next? If not, I want to. So there was a, not sure how all of you saw to get invited to get here. So originally I made like a social media post, and it had like, hey, you know, share like a name of a mutual aid group that you know of, right? And make sure you help. But on there was also like a link to a document like that you could well, it's a Google form where you guys could sign up, right? You guys could register. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? Okay, so if not, then I want you to go to like Wild Style Stories or go to like my page, go to his page, and just kind of like look. We'll repost that.
I'll repost it right now.
Okay, there you go. So do that, okay? Everybody in this room, make sure that you guys, if y'all do that, okay, and we said 2 weeks, right? Pay attention to social media, okay? And then that's our action items for right now, and I'm gonna pass it off to you, friend. Where are we at?
We are 7.
We're at almost 8 o'clock.
So we need to find out from. Okay. Well, hold on. Does anybody have any final words?
Thank you for putting this together. Thanks for coming. Make it
Actually, you know what? I'm going to take just 1 second here. Can we just have like 30 seconds to just be quiet and hold some space for our grief and the fact that, you know, we have friends who are dead. We have family members who are dead. I'm going to let Pastor start us off there, but then, yeah, we're going to do that.
I'm a pastor, so can we pray? Nobody be offended. Lord God, we come before you as humble as we know how. Lord, we thank you for those that have braved the cold to come out tonight. Lord God, we thank you for the passion that's in this room to make a difference. We pray for our homeless brothers and sisters. We pray, Lord God, for everyone that's providing services to them as well. Lord, we pray that you will touch the hearts and minds of key leaders in our city to want to make a difference, Lord God. Heavenly Father, we know we can do better. I pray you will encourage and motivate and stir all of us to be the best we can be to make a difference in this situation. Lord, be with us all as we go back to our various destinations. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right, we're going to do 30 seconds, and then if anybody else wants to raise their hand, we'll do that, okay? All right, that's church, folks. We'll see you in a couple weeks.